Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for attending. Welcome to the very grand and apt surroundings of the reading room. I recognise many of the faces, but for those I don't recognise, my name's Rupi Rai. I'm a family lawyer just down the road at Chancery Lane for Slater & Gordon. A special warm welcome to Slater & Gordon's senior management team, Neil Kinsella, Kath Evans, CEO, and to our distinguished guests, arbitrator and former judge, Sir Peter Singer, and journalist and commentator, Amanda Platel. This evening marks an important moment for this firm as we launch a book written by our experts with a key purpose of making the law accessible. In fact, this goal of opening up the law to everyone is consistent with the ideals of Slater & Gordon that have underpinned the firm since 1935. Access to justice for all. And it is right now, in 2014, that Slater & Gordon's journey has reached an exciting juncture. To many, ours is a new name in the legal market, but in the 2 short years since we arrived on Chancery Lane, Slater & Gordon has become one of the UK's leading independent providers of consumer legal services. We are dedicated to providing truly world-class representation to people across the UK. And now, after joining forces with several other firms, most recently Fenton's and Pannoni's, we are making good on that promise. We reach the full breadth of the market, from employment law to our real estate practice, contentious probate to our city corporate crime teams. And already we've been involved in some of the most high-profile cases in recent years, including complex group litigation, actions like the mis-selling of illegal financial products, and several child abuse cases. And on a daily basis, we continue to fight for justice for victims of industrial diseases, workplace discrimination, and clinical negligence. Beyond this, our commitment goes further still as we actively campaign Westminster to make sure the voices of those most in need are heard loud along the corridors of power. And in the family department, the reason why we're here today, we strive to deliver the very best service at the best rates with care and compassion. That is why this book was written. Family Law Made Simple. And if you haven't noticed it, it's scattered around everywhere. This has been a labour of love, a considerable labour for love for some, such as Sarah Thompson, but the team have put in many, many hours into this book during the past year. Driving that commitment was their experience that the public needed to better understand family law and how to deal with the legal side of relationship breakdown. Sarah has succeeded, and I'm confident this book will bring comfort to many thousands of people going through this very traumatic time. Now, let's hear more in detail why this book really is something that we should all be proud of. I'll pass you on now to Sarah Thompson. Thank you.
Thank you, Rupi, and thank you to everyone here who has come tonight. I hope this evening's gathering will prove worthwhile for you. This book came about as a result of our clients telling us that they found it difficult to navigate their way through the legal system. They were already in the midst of one of the most emotional, stressful, and traumatic times of their lives, and the UK's legal maze was the last problem that they needed. They wanted an easy-to-follow reference book and guide to the family law legal system, so we set to work. Family Law Simple aims to do exactly that. It is a book to explain in easy, impartial terms what the reader's rights are and what steps they need to take. Also, it provides support and advice on how to successfully work through what can often feel like a legal fog. This guide focuses on the essential aspects of the law that people need to know when going through a relationship breakdown, as well as outlining how the process works step by step. It talks the reader through the obstacles they will face on their journey and provides them with advice on how to overcome those hurdles, as well as dispelling the many untruths surrounding family law. There is, of course, never a substitute for a good family lawyer, but this guide should provide the reader with the information they need to make the process as easy as possible. We hope it will give the reader the insight, intelligence, and confidence to to tackle the intricacies of the legal process and move on with their life, safe in the knowledge that the outcome was fair, reasonable, and in keeping with the law. But what this book does best, and what I am personally very proud of, is that it makes the law accessible. Whilst I may have been the main contributor to the book, I must take this opportunity to thank Cara Nuttall, our child law guru. Cara very skillfully wrote the chapters relating to child law. So, thank you again for coming, and now let me pass you back to Rupi, who will introduce our main speakers.
Thank you, Sarah. It's an unfortunate truth that 1/3 of marriages in the UK end in divorce. Tonight's guest speaker is no stranger to that statistic, a divorcee and a serial failed cohabitee. And she has kindly agreed to share some thoughts with us. I welcome Amanda Platel, who among her many accolades can list Daily Mail columnist, managing director of The Independent, editor of the Sunday Express on her CV, and my most favourite programme, which is Question Time, and you're a regular panellist on that. So welcome, Amanda.
Right. That was a lovely introduction, thank you. Now, since you've stolen my best line, I think that to most of you I'm most familiar as one of these kind of, talking heads on things like Question Time, The Andrew Marr Show, and my column, and my abysmal effort to try and get William Hague elected in the 2001 election. But what most people don't know about me is that, as Rupi said, I am a divorcee and a serial failed cohabitee. And I have to say that in this long life of mine so far, all of those experiences have bankrupted me both emotionally and financially. If only I had had this damned little book before I got married. If only I'd known what was going to be ahead of me when my husband decided that he didn't really like working and he liked other women more than he liked me. When he said, well, darling, it's so fantastic. I'll support you in your career. I'll do everything I can to be behind you and to look after you. And then I discover girl number 1, girl number 2, girl number 3. Now, I've completely come off my script here, so you've got to forgive me. When I just see, even all these years later, it still gets to you. Okay, if I'd had this little book, I'd be a happier woman. And I actually think now that any person contemplating any kind of relationship, even going away for the weekend with someone, should read that book. Now, one of the things I love most, I read this, and look, get asked to speak at a lot of things. I turn almost everything down because I just think, what have I got to say to a bunch of accountants? But I know something about marriage and failure and divorce. And when I read this book, I thought, this is so fantastic. One of the bits I love, get a lawyer, not a friend. When we're in a position where we're divorcing, the relationship's going wrong, you're whinging to your friends the whole time, you're talking to your mum and dad, you get fantastic advice like my dad gave me. I said, Dad, John's having an affair and I just don't know what to do. And he said, dump the bastard, Mandy. Now, whereas that's lovely advice, it's not helpful. How do you dump the bastard when I've been the breadwinner, when he has not been working, when, we've got 2 cats, more of which later, and when he suddenly finds this fantastic lawyer who turns around and says, well, actually, since you've been the breadwinner and he's been dependent upon you, you then have to pay him spousal maintenance. I didn't even know what spousal maintenance was. That's probably because I'm Australian. So now let me I'm just going to go through this. I'm a completely hopeless speaker. I go all over the place. Anyway, the spousal maintenance was basically that he, because I'd been the breadwinner, I had to pay for him and his mistress and the life that they would like to have. And I thought that was very unfair. But that was the law, and in the end we did a deal. And he said, this is what I want. He gave me a list, 3 pages of single-spaced A4, telling me what he wanted. He wanted everything except for my underwear. And I think that's probably one of the most hurtful things. But at the very end of the list was Ronnie. And at the time we had 2 cats called Ronnie and Reggie, who were called the Claw Brothers. I was new to this country. I didn't know that was a horrible thing to call them. And at the end was Ronnie. He wanted to take one of the cats. And I said, you can't have the cat. You can have everything. You have the car, you have the house, you have everything, but you can't have Ronnie. And he said, I'll come and catnap him. And I said, and I will come and kill you. But that's what happens when you get divorced. You go into these relationships, you think it's going to be wonderful, you think it's all about love and it's going to last forever, and we do hope it does. And I still, at this old age, hope that one day it will last forever. Now I've got to get back to my script. Okay, this is one of my favorite bits. I still remember, I was so cute. I was 26 years old, a little bit tanned, the church in Sydney. We're getting married, wind flowing, veil going up. It was so cool. And our wedding vows were, all that I am, I give to you, and all that I have, I share with you. Little did I know. When we met, he was successful, he had a really good job, and I was just starting out my career. Fast forward 3 years, he was liking the bottle and his girls more than he liked me. And then when I found out about the first affair, and it turned out it wasn't the only one, he'd hardly worked, I worked and he slept with other women. It turned out that he didn't have much to share with me when it came to dividing out what they call matrimonial pot. But boy, did I have a lot to share with him. I love the matrimonial pot thing in this book, but when it comes down to it, you can look at, if you have no prenups, you can actually look at what you have brought into a relationship, which obviously you can try and separate. But once you're in there, it's 50-50, It doesn't matter if he has an affair, it doesn't matter if you have an affair. It doesn't matter if you're supporting the other spouse. When it comes down to it, it's 50-50. And if you're the person who's going out every day and having to come out at night making speeches to pay your mortgage, then you know how much that can hurt. Spousal maintenance, I've talked about that. I've probably been going on for too long already. Cohabitation, I think, is a fantastic section in this book. All of my friends think that you live with a bloke for 2 years, or a bloke thinks you live with a woman who's a high achiever for 2 years, and then it's all as though you were married. Forget it. You have no rights. I think there's so much in this book that is so instructive. And what I would do is I would make sure that, not only that I am going to read it again before I go and spend a weekend with a lovely man that I may want to spend the rest of my life with, or get married, or cohabit, I want him to read it as well. I think it should be given to kids in school. I think they should be... I do! So I would recommend this incredibly highly. And then the last thing that I would come back to, I always do that, I'm so rubbish, is, look, I don't want this to seem like a kind of anti-marriage or anti-cohabiting rant. I had a very long-term relationship with someone where we lived together, and I thought that at the end of it, I would be able to get a little bit out of it because I paid the mortgage for 3 years. I've learnt a lot in that time, and I would have never made the mistakes I'd made if I'd read that little book first. But I still believe in love. I still believe there's someone gorgeous out there. And we're just going to always have that book under the pillow for that weekend. Thank you.
Anyway, thank you very much for that, Amanda. Finally, I'd like to introduce you to Sir Peter Singer, a gentleman who has over 25 years' experience practicing family law at the bar before being appointed to the Family Division High Court bench in 1993. He practiced as a family division judge from 1993 to 2010. Following retirement from the bench in 2010, he rejoined One Hare Court as a family dispute resolution facilitator. And I have to say, although partly retired, you just are halfway through a 20-day hearing, aren't you? So if that's retirement, then I'm clearly not go and continue in the similar vein. I intend to leave and go on holiday a lot. Anyway, you're a strong advocate for the arbitration process and qualified as a member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. He was jointly voted the most innovative family lawyer of the year in 2012 for his pioneering approach to the cause of arbitration in developing the website familyarbitrator.com. In addition, for 22 years, he has been one of the editors of the annual resource for family finance practitioners, At a Glance, which I've already told you is my Bible and bedtime reading. His work and dedication are unparalleled. Ladies and gentlemen, please may I present Sir Peter Singer.
Well, I hope you're all standing comfortably, because I don't expect I should be more than half an hour or so. A refrain current and no doubt popular in the times of Henry VI, at least in part 2 of his dramatic reign, was, "Let's kill all the lawyers." And it continues to resonate within the public psyche. This is evidenced by campaigns run not just by the Mail, but also by the Times and others. And may I make it clear that within the generic hate group, I of course include judges as well-established multinational firms of solicitors. 2 questions immediately arise. I'm not a talking head. Anyone who's been in my court knows that reticence reigns. Hardly a word passes my lips. I don't know why there are people laughing over there. From morn till eve, or at least 4:30. Why, unless as a butt for rotten eggs and overripe tomatoes, have I been asked to speak to you this evening? Well, that's unfathomable, and I won't waste your time attempting to justify it. But having left the bench, or as it threatens to become the treadmill, maybe I can speak from a position and with the perspective of independence. But the second and more pertinent question is where that kill all the lawyers attitude has got us here in 2014. Your hosts and mine, Susan Thompson and her team at Slater and Gordon, who compiled this valuable vade-mecum through the tribulations and sometimes even the in-court trials of relationship breakdown and separation, they very helpfully put together a list of 9 or so possible topics for me. I'm sure their objective was the laudable one of reducing the risk of my going seriously off-piste. So here goes. I do know that I'm here to praise the virtues of this book. I'm saddened by the lack of a pink tape and a bottle of champagne to swing in some direction or another, but apparently that's another sort of launch. I can and do fully and without reserve commend this book to you, whether you come to it as a lawyer or litigant, counsellor or conciliator, for it helps fill a gap, to bridge a rift, and to help realign a fault line, which leaves victims adrift not only on the sea of conflicting and shifting emotions, but also within some Bermudan triangle, the path out of which is not easily discernible. And when I speak of victims, I have very much in mind that most often, as well as their children, both parties to a family split are victims. A widening lacuna between family lawyers and their customers risks provoking, if it hasn't already in some measure become, a national scandal on a par in scale with the shortcomings already apparent or emerging in the provision our community makes for its members' health, education, welfare provision, and the care which it extends to the young, the vulnerable, and the old. It is matched by unwelcome and unwholesome public attitudes, to an extent fostered and given traction by our leaders, on topics such as immigration, deportation, and the unthinkable suggestion that we should disown and unscramble the statute, confirming the importance, indeed the supremacy, of human rights. Austerity or battening down the financial hatches do not justify, nor should they require, so much that is so retrograde. Here are a few examples of the worst examples in recent weeks and months in the sphere of family law. Number one, a man effectively on trial for rape, albeit in a civil rather than a criminal court, is refused legal representation at the hearing. His alleged victim, therefore, is to be subjected, subject to the intervention of the judge, to direct questioning by her alleged assailant, a situation specifically barred in criminal courts. Number two, a parent's application for permission to take a child temporarily abroad is effectively stalemated and stymied by a refusal to authorize an expert to give an opinion on the foreign law involved. Number three, the requirement that parents in a child case, now no longer entitled to publicly funded representation, should share the cost of an expert opinion deemed necessary by a judge. Some cannot afford to do so. Too bad. I believe that particular interpretation of that executive formulation of the rules, a decision of Mr. Justice Ryder, as he then was, in J.S. A Child and the Legal Services Commission of infamous repute, may still be subject to pending appeal. Is that right? No one here is too sure. I couldn't find the answer on the website. But over and beyond all that, there is the bigger picture, which in the area of family law is of increasing woe, and that despite the very best and indeed often virtually self-sacrificial efforts of so many engaged in the process, be they solicitors, barristers, court staff or judges. The drive and energy of the President of the Family Division may pull us back from the brink. The changes to be imminently wrought by the introduction of an overarching family court to encompass judicial hierarchies from the magistrates up may help, but the negative impact on the family court system of the April 2014 assault on permissible scope for public funding, combined with the proposed 10% reduction in charging rates for publicly funded work on top of years of imposed stagnation, while overheads, of course, rose inexorably around them, threatens to overwhelm both courts and those who turn to them to resolve their relationship disputes. Mediation, conciliation, and for the irreconcilable even arbitration of financial disputes may suit many, but are no panacea. Government plans by stick and by carrot to improve the rate of mediation referrals seem to have stalled. Less family lawyers will be a consequence, is so already. Many already skinny cats with no further flesh available to be trimmed or slimmed down will leave the profession fleeced by these changes of the means to make a living. How many of the normally bright and bushy-tailed next generations of aspirant family felines will there be to replace them? Firms will close, have closed, making even geographical access to advice problematic throughout considerable swathes of the land. More litigants acting for themselves. That necessarily consumes more of that rare commodity, time available in court, and is wearing for judges at any level who will be besieged by case after case without a lawyer, in sight or to be heard. This evening, as I left court, I'm sitting today, the other judge on my corridor, Mrs. Justice King, no slouch, pointed to 6 box files, which are her reading for tomorrow's cases, 4 cases, all with only litigants in person. Imagine the pressure. Managing such cases, as well as deciding them, superimposes a large layer of responsibility on the court. Longer cases mean longer lists and yet longer delays, which in many courts for many types of work already are shockingly indefensible. All this adds up to less access to justice, which of itself detracts from justice, and a point may then be reached when justice delayed is justice denied. Have I sufficiently described the terrain as seen from my, I hope not too jaundiced perspective? I wish I had a pair of rose-coloured spectacles which I could put on to mitigate the view, but my wife refused to lend me hers as I left this morning. So, where does family law made simple fit in? It expresses clearly, straightforwardly, and with balance what lies ahead for separating couples and their children. It does not patronise, but its home truths should hit home. It does not oversimplify either. It acknowledges the power of the emotions which separation can unleash, and it recognises the powerlessness and uncertainty which one side or both so often experience. It places children and their welfare where they should be, that is, centre stage and at the top of their parents' priorities. It is a book written by human beings who are also lawyers. If you are less generously disposed towards lawyers, it is a book written by lawyers who have stayed human. It fills a gap. It tells its readers what they need to know and what to do, and where to go and how to go about it if they don't know. It unashamedly advises taking lawyers' advice, and why not? Better the view of an experienced lawyer, I know I suspect most if not all of you would say, than trust to the maybe ill-informed and possibly less than objectively independent advice of well-meaning family or friends, or of unregulated individuals or businesses offering to act for both parties. I hope you'll bear with me for sounding off about what seem to me to be important issues which we should redress as we hope, come out of economic and fiscal stagnation into a new era of what may be sustainable and sustaining growth. To end, however, on a lighter note, I was going to tell you a joke. But actually, I haven't been able to think of one that's appropriate to such a sombre subject, and so I'll stop there. I do indeed commend this book to you. May all those who need and read it have a smoother journey to the other side of separation's anxieties, and thus, had I a bottle of champagne, I would thee launch. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. It's the highest accolade we could ever ask for. Thank you very much for attending. It's been wonderful to see you all here to support the Family Law Team's book. I'd like you now to spend some time, mingle, speak to each other, drink some more wine. I think there's more Prosecco floating about. But thank you very much. Good night.